The title of this video is spot on, and not for the first time. FIFA 16 is now the ultimate retro FIFA game that everyone has wanted for years. Unlike the FIFA Infinity mod that I talked about a few months ago, which added 136 new leagues and updated the squads to 2025 ones, the mod that we're looking at today actually features seasons all the way from 2025 all the way back to 1880. So let's have a look at what could become the best FIFA game of all time. So the first thing we have to talk about is the amount of years. This is done in a slightly different way. Instead of picking a certain year inside the game, you actually have to just drag some files into your folder, press one button, and then you'll be able to play with any team from that decade. So if you wanted to play in the 2020s, you would drag that one in. You'd be able to play from 2021 all the way to 2025. However, if you wanted to go all the way back to 1880, you can absolutely do that. In the 1880s and 1870s, the squads are a little bit harder to research, so some of the players might not actually be real or have stats that were appropriate for how good they are, but all of the players actually have their attributes rated into that era. So the best player from the 1880s will be about a 96, the best player from the 1920s will also be a 96, all the way up to the present day where you'll have players like Haaland, Mbappe, Messi and Ronaldo. There are actually a few big leagues for each year. The English First Division is almost always there with 3 teams in it, but so is the German, French and Spanish leagues. However, the Italian league is much more complete. If you're interested in playing with Serie A, then you can play with about 10 to 15 teams from any year from the start of the Italian league all the way up to the present day. In fact, it might be interesting to look through some of the options and tournaments that you can play with this mod, so let's do that right now. So I have loaded in the 1960s because this is an era I don't actually know too much about, and it would be interesting to maybe learn a little bit more about 60s football. So let's have a look what we've got. First of all, we have the FIFA World Cup from 1962. We have the Euros, we have every single year in this decade, starting off with 1960, separated by division, and it's done like leagues and different nations in a normal FIFA game. You also have the FIFA Fantasy teams. These are like World 11s for the eras, separated by every 5 years. And we also have some South American teams in case you want to do something like the Libertadores. But the most interesting thing, I think, is how detailed Serie A is compared to the other leagues. So in England, Spain, and the Bundesliga, there's 3 teams or 4 teams for every single nation. Whereas in Italy, there is actually quite a lot you can choose from. I'm interested to see how detailed some of the smaller clubs are that aren't from these big leagues are in this mod though. So we've selected Benfica, who were actually quite a big team at the time, just to have a look at their squad. You can see they've got Eusebio up front, a 96 rated, totally fair, and I think Torres up front also deserves that 92 because he was absolutely unreal. But look how deep this squad is. If there's a player that played for Benfica in 1969-70, then they're in this mod. Let's have a look at this team from Berlin as well. They must have been in the Champions League, probably from East Germany because I've never heard of them. They have the right kits. Spartak Tirana, another team that would have been in the Champions League back then, they also have the right kits. Of course, this is a time before sponsors and big brand logos on the kit, so that's exactly what they look like in the past. So that was kickoff mode. Now let's look at tournament mode, where you can do a World Cup, you can do the International Cup, you can do one of the 3 Euros that happened in that decade, 60, 64 and 66, or you can play by season and do an actual Champions League or an actual Serie A using the actual teams as they were. So in the 1960 Champions League, this is the 8 teams that have been selected. I think there was probably more than that in real life, but that's the 8 that got chosen. If you choose the World Cup, this is what you get. This is the 1966 one, and these are exactly the teams that were in that competition. Even the likes of North Korea have been recreated by the mod team. This is absolutely insane work. I can imagine this would have taken absolutely forever to generate the players, to add the mini faces, to give them the correct stats and ratings. This is literally hundreds of thousands of hours of work for the entire mod team, and it's so cool to see. You can even see they've added in little features like there only being a single substitute for the World Cup in 1966, just like was actually the case in real life. We're going to put Greaves on the bench in case we need a bit more firepower, and we're going to also just go into edit players and have a look at what some of the other teams look like. First of all, France. I see they've got Geografifa at the bottom right there. Let's have a look at him. So if we click on him, he will load, and he looks pretty good, to be honest. That's kind of what he looked like. If we go to Northern Ireland, George Best, let's have a look at him. Spot on. He has a real face, and of course Northern Ireland played in that exact kit in the World Cup in 1966. I'm not a massive sort of fan of the 1960s football, so if we select a random person from West Germany, yeah, that could be what he looks like. However, I do know a little bit more about 2002, so I think maybe what we should do is switch over to 2002 and have a look what is going on in that. We're going to have a look at Brazil, because of course this team is legendary. Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, Kaká, Cafu, Roberto Carlos, all of them should be in there, and of course, absolutely they are. This team is so good. Again, all of the players have the right stats, they have the right mini faces, and where possible, they also have the correct 3D faces too, so that you can just play a match in the 2002 World Cup, and it will just be as authentic as is possible. I think that this is like the coolest mod that I have ever seen. Imagine playing a career mode where you have Dida in your goal, where you have the Turkish national team. They did so well at this World Cup, and it's totally possible. But if you don't like 2002, you can also switch to 1930 and play as Uruguay back then, or when United States beat the English team in like 1956 or whenever it was. There are so many cool stories out there that you can now play thanks to this mod. You could take the mighty Magyars and try and win back-to-back World Cups in the 50s. You could try and win a World Cup with Johan Cruyff. You could do so many cool things, all thanks to the effort that these guys have put in. So you might be wondering, what is the game like actually on the pitch? Because off the pitch, it is so good. Well, it is just FIFA 16 gameplay, sadly. I think this isn't actually that great of a game. It's the modding that is so good, because the modding tools are so out of this world, that makes the game worth playing again. FIFA 16 itself isn't actually that great. So here are some highlights of the game we did against Turkey. We actually did go on to lose this one because we put it on the highest difficulty. I'm not too used to playing on FIFA 16, but it was fun to play it, despite it being almost 10 years old. So absolutely, I recommend you download this mod and give it a go if you have a PC that's capable. Almost everyone's PC should be able to run this, because this game is so old that I think even like integrated graphics should be able to run FIFA 16 in 2025. If you're looking for a short game to just play around with between now and when FC 26 comes out, then I think this is probably one of the best ones that you could pick. You can do a few short careers, you can do a few World Cups or Champions Leagues with your team if you haven't ever used them back in the day, and you can use some legendary players like Pele, Maradona, Zidane, with their contemporaries, rather than using them in Ultimate Team where you're playing against people that are long dead or people that are still active right now. It's just a little bit different using Ronaldo with Ronaldinho rather than having him with Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo in Ultimate Team. But thank you for watching. Really do appreciate it. Download this mod. All the information is in the description below, and I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.